All right, welcome to part two of the decimal review. That kind of rhymed, but I'm going to pick up where we left off. So we're now rounding decimals. So with rounding decimals, you can be instructed to round to the underlined digit, round to the nearest tenth. You can round to the nearest hundredth, round to the nearest whole number. So with this one, we are going to round the decimal to the nearest tenth. Once again, it's very important that you read the directions, underline, circle, highlight, whatever you need to do to make sure that you're rounding to the correct place. Whatever it tells you to round to the nearest tenth, that's the digit that you're going to underline. So here it says round this number to the nearest tenth, 17 and 46 hundredths. So, I have to know my place value, my decimal place value, to help me with this. So I know that here's my decimal. That word, what's my favorite word? I'm sure you're saying it in your head, is the word and. That represents that decimal. So 17 and 46 hundredths. So I know that this is my ones place, this is my tens place. These are whole numbers. Our decimals are parts of a whole. So we have a tenth, and then we have our hundredths. Okay? So we're going to round the nearest tenth. So our 4 is in the tenths place. We're going to underline that, and then we're going to draw an arrow. And today I sang the Cupid Shuffle, to the right, to the right. So we're looking to the right, and that number is bossy. And it's going to tell us what to do to the number in the tenths place, but it's so bossy that we got to get rid of it afterwards. So remember that if it is 4 and below, you leave it alone. 5 and above, you give it a shove. So here we have 17 and 46 hundredths. 4 is in the tenths place, so this is 4 tenths. And this 6 is going to tell us what we need to do to that 4. So I want you to think about it. Is the 6 4 and below or 5 and above? You're right, it's 5 and above, so we got to give it a shove. So this 4 is going to increase by 1. So when we round to the nearest tenth, we're going to get 17 and 5 tenths. Remember, rounding is an estimation. It's about 17 and 5 tenths when rounded to the nearest tenth. But we get rid of this 6 because it's so bossy and tells us what to do that we don't like it, so we get rid of it. Now, some of you asked today, well, why can't you put a 0 right here? Well, you can, because 17 and 50 hundredths is equivalent. Whoops, my pen went away. Is equivalent to 17 and 5 tenths. So that goes back to when we talked about equivalent decimals. Okay. If you want to try one, try rounding 18 and 54 hundredths to the nearest tenth. So follow these same directions, nearest tenth. Pause the video, see if you can round it. When you round this is the time to pause, and then check your answer. So we're rounding to the nearest tenth again. We're going to underline the tenths place. We see that the 5 is in the tenths place. And then to the right, so where we're going to go. And that 4, it's bossy. It's in the hundredths place, going to tell us what to do. Is it 4 and below or 5 and above? Well, if it's 4 and below, we leave it alone. 5 and above, we give it a shove. So it's 4. 4 and below, we got to leave it alone. But it's so bossy, we're going to get rid of it. So 18 and 54 hundredths rounds to 18 and 5 tenths. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Here's the next slide. So it says drop any digits to the right of the rounding digit. So that's kind of what I just said. You know, when it's bossy and it's telling us what to do, we get rid of it. So we've really already answered this question. 17 and 46 hundredths rounded to the nearest tenth, we know, is 17 and 5 tenths. And just in case you forgot, we underline the digit. When it says nearest tenth, we underline the tenths place. And then that digit to the right, that's 6. It's bossy, tells us what to do. It's 5 and above, so we got to give that 4 a shove. But then it's so bossy, we got to get rid of it. So really, this rounds to 17 and 5 tenths. Now here's a new direction. It says round to the nearest whole number. Now a lot of you got confused on this one today. You're not looking at the entire number of 17. It says to the nearest whole number. So we want the whole number that is closest to the decimal. Remember, when we have a decimal, the digits to the left are whole numbers. The digits to the right are parts of a whole. So here, our nearest whole number is going to be this 7 and 17. So 17 and 46 hundredths, we're going to underline that 7 because it's the nearest whole number to our decimal. And then we're going to go to the right, and that 4 is going to tell us what to do. It's bossy. So if it's 4 and below, leave it alone. 5 and above, give it a shove. So 17, that 4 tells me that it's 4 and below, so that 7 has to stay the same. So when we round 17 and 46 hundredths to the nearest whole number, my answer is 17. And I get rid of both of these because if I get rid of this one because it's bossy, I got to do the same thing with this one. I got to get rid of it. It can't have any help. So 17 is my answer. Okay, try to round this number to the nearest whole number. 19 and 57 hundredths. All right, pause the video, attempt this, then unpause to check your answer. So nearest whole number is going to be the place closest to the decimal, which is 19, or the 9 and 19, 9 ones. And then I'm going to go to the right, and that 5 is going to be bossy. It's going to tell us what to do. That 5 is saying, hey, it's 5 and above, we got to give that 9 a shove. So 19 and 57 hundredths is going to round to 20. And we're going to get rid of the bossy numbers because we don't like them. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you got it correct. All right, last one. So this one says, what is 8 and 545 thousandths of a kilogram rounded to the nearest hundredth? Okay, so here's our direction, nearest hundredth. Remember, we want to highlight, underline, circle, star, whatever you want to do to make sure that you're understanding the direction. So this is part A, nearest hundredth. Then it says to the nearest tenth. So there are two questions in this question. That's why it's so important to read the entire question. Okay, so part A is going to be rounding to the hundredths, and part B is going to be rounding to the tenths. So I always like to rewrite the number 8 and 545 thousandths. I'm going to go ahead and do it for both so I don't forget. And now I'm going to look at part A. Nearest hundredth. Okay, so I'm going to underline the digit in the hundredths place. Remember, this is our ones. This is a whole number. Then on this side are parts of a whole. So we've got our tenths, our hundredths, and our thousandths. Okay, so we're looking for the nearest hundredth. We're going to underline the digit in the hundredths place. And then we're going to go to the right. And that 5 is going to tell us what to do. That 5, remember, if it's 4 below, you leave it alone. 5 and above, give it a shove. So this 5 is 5 and above. So we're going to give that 4 a shove. So my new decimal, rounded to the nearest hundredth, is 8 and 55 hundredths. And then I get rid of this 5 right here because it's bossy and it bossed me around too much, so I had to let it go. All right, so that is the answer for part A. Then it says for part B, round to the nearest tenth. So once again, here's my decimal. Got my ones, my whole numbers, and I've got my parts of a whole. My tenths, my hundredths, and my thousandths. So what number is in the tenths place? It's 5. And I'm going to underline that, and then I'm going to go to the right. So that 4 is going to tell us what to do. If it's 4 and below, leave it alone. 5 and above, give it a shove. So what does that 4 tell us to do? It tells us to leave that 5 alone. So my new decimal, when rounded to the nearest tenth, is 8 and 5 tenths. And then I get rid of that 4 and that 5 because both of them together are just so bossy that I don't want them in my number. Once again, you could put a 0 here, and that is an equivalent decimal to 8.5. Because 0 is 0, and it's not going to change the value of these decimals. All right? I hope this helps you study for your test. I hope it helps you review. If you have any questions, just let me know.